In the solemn atmosphere of Charlie Kirk's funeral, amid the lowered flags and whispered prayers, an unexpected moment left the entire nation in stunned silence. It wasn't a political speech, but a private act, so raw and heartbreaking that it became haunting. What exactly happened that day? In the heavy atmosphere of Charlie Kirk's funeral, all eyes were drawn to the flag-draped casket being carried into the hall. The ceremony was held in Arizona, where his body was flown home aboard Air Force Two, a detail that carried both national weight and revealed the vast influence Kirk had left behind. The solemn setting, with its soft light, fresh flowers scattered across the hall, and whispered prayers, made everyone who entered feel the gravity of this loss. Yet, what haunted the nation was not the rituals themselves, but a moment so simple, so deeply private, that no one could have expected it. Attendees came to the funeral carrying grief for a powerful activist, a man whose voice had shaped politics, but they also wanted to witness how the country would remember him. They expected speeches from notable figures, the presence of dignitaries, and carefully orchestrated symbols of farewell. And yet, what moved millions was none of that. In a silence so heavy it felt suffocating, an unexpected image appeared, and the entire mood of the hall shifted in an instant. Those who were there recalled that the room seemed frozen. Cameras captured every detail, every restrained breath. A single act, wordless, unplanned, and unpolished, swept away the importance of flags, songs, and even the presence of national leaders. That one moment transformed the funeral from a ceremonial remembrance into a deeply human story that no one who witnessed it could ever forget. Curiosity soon spread far beyond those in attendance, reaching the public nationwide as the images began to circulate. People asked, what could have pierced such a formal and solemn setting so deeply? Why did this single moment rise above politics, echoing in the hearts of millions who saw it? The funeral was expected to be a national farewell, remembered for its political significance. Yet, in the end, what etched itself into memory was something entirely different. A single, unassuming act became the defining symbol of the day, a story of love, loss, and the final connection between the living and the dead. It was this, not the speeches or rituals, that carried the emotional weight of the farewell. Charlie Kirk's funeral, meant to be a grand political and national event, instead became a deeply human mystery, one that still lingers, reminding the country of the unshakable power of private grief revealed before the world. Right after the solemn opening, Charlie Kirk's funeral shifted into an entirely different emotional chapter. Everyone in the hall expected speeches and familiar rituals, but instead, the focus suddenly fell on one unexpected detail: the appearance of Erica Kirk beside the casket. For days after the tragedy, she had almost disappeared from public view, sharing only a few brief words on social media. Yet on this day, in the heart of the ceremony, she walked in as the central figure, and instantly the atmosphere changed. Dressed in simple black, her face hollowed by grief, Erica moved slowly toward the flag-draped casket. Every eye followed her, every step. When she reached the center, she stopped, her hands trembling as though she was battling a storm of emotions within. Then came a gesture that seemed so small, yet carried immeasurable weight. She placed her hand upon the wooden surface of the casket. The entire hall sank into breathless silence, so heavy that one could almost hear their own heartbeat. For those who witnessed it, that act was not just a farewell gesture. It felt like a direct strike to the heart, laying bare the rawest, truest form of sorrow. She did not speak, nor did she prepare any words. There were only shaking shoulders, trembling fingers, and tear-filled eyes. In that moment, all the formal rituals seemed to vanish. What remained was simply a woman confronting the greatest loss of her life. Images and videos later captured this scene, and once they spread, it quickly became iconic. People no longer recalled the speeches, but remembered vividly the sight of Erica leaning close to the casket, her hand pressed firmly as if trying to hold on to her husband's spirit one last time. It was silent mourning, but it spoke louder than any words ever could. This moment transformed Charlie Kirk's funeral into a story no one would forget. It revealed that beyond the political spotlight, beyond heated debates, there was an undeniable truth. He was a husband, a father, and now an irreplaceable loss to his family. The most haunting moment of Charlie Kirk's funeral did not come from speeches or national rituals, but from the raw despair of his widow. When Erica Kirk bent down beside the open casket, the entire hall seemed to hold its breath. Her trembling hand touched her husband's lifeless hand, and in that instant, the final connection between the living and the dead became so vivid that no one could look away. At first, it was only a gentle touch, a soft farewell. But soon, the gesture turned into a desperate grip, as if she was trying to pull him back from death itself. Her shoulders shook, tears fell in heavy drops, and she pressed her face against that motionless hand, searching for warmth that was no longer there. In that moment, the outside world disappeared. No cameras, no dignitaries, no formalities, only a wife clinging to love one last time. Those present described the scene as almost unbearable. The grief was too raw, too real, and it moved many to tears. They weren't just witnessing death, they were witnessing pain laid bare, unshielded by politics or by any facade of strength. It was love in its most desperate form, where a single grasp became the fragile thread holding on to memory and soul. The cameras captured that moment, and within hours, images of Erica clutching her husband's hand spread across the globe. Yet for those inside the hall, it was more than a picture. It was a storm of emotion roaring in silence, grief exploding without words. When Erica kissed the lifeless hand, when she pressed her face against it, people understood this was not just a farewell, but a final attempt to preserve a bond death had already severed. That despair, both choking and raw, transformed the funeral into a declaration of love and loss. It made people realize that although Charlie Kirk had been a controversial political figure, what endured was not the debates, but the irreplaceable absence felt by a wife and her family. And in that despair, the nation discovered a rare moment of collective empathy. While the quiet image of Erica Kirk beside the casket had stunned the nation, it was her words that truly carved themselves into the hearts of those who listened. When she finally stepped to the podium, her voice heavy with emotion, yet steady with conviction, the hall fell into absolute silence. No longer the image of a helpless widow, this time, Erica stood as a woman who had found strength within her grief, transforming sorrow into resolve. She did not speak as the wife of a well-known political figure, but as a woman who had lost the love of her life and as a mother forced to comfort her children. Erica described Charlie as a man who lived with purpose, carrying his faith into every aspect of his life, whether on stage before the public or in the small home where he was a father and husband. To her, Charlie was not merely a national figure, but the beating heart of their family. The most moving moment came when Erica shared what she had told their young daughter. To soften the brutal reality, she explained that her father was away on a work trip with Jesus. A simple phrase, yet one that carried unbearable sorrow. It was the way of a desperate mother trying to shield her child from grief while preserving faith in her tender heart. The entire hall was struck silent, for in that simplicity lay a profound pain that everyone could feel. But Erica did not stop at grief. She turned her speech into a vow. She swore that Charlie's voice would not be silenced, that his legacy would endure through their family and through the values he had lived for. She urged those present to find strength not in anger, but in faith, the very foundation that Charlie had always relied upon. In her trembling yet resolute voice, people heard not only pain, but also the fire of resilience. At that moment, the funeral ceased to be only a farewell and became a declaration. It was no longer about national rituals or the presence of political leaders, but about a wife's promise to carry forward her husband's unfinished mission. Erica's tribute carried both tenderness and defiance, reminding everyone that although Charlie's life was cut short, his influence would endure. In this way, Charlie Kirk's funeral rose above the level of a political event and became a deeply human story. And it was Erica's words that confirmed it. Even though death had taken away a man, love, faith, and the mission he left behind would continue to live on. Faith was the golden thread running through Charlie Kirk's funeral, shaping the atmosphere from the very first moment to the last. If the image of Erica at the casket created an intimate, haunting memory, then Christian faith provided the spiritual foundation that kept the ceremony from sinking into pure despair. Instead, it became a journey marked by both sorrow and hope. From the very beginning, the soft prayers echoing throughout the hall set the tone for the day. They were not stiff rituals, but whispers of comfort, reminding those present that they were not alone in their grief. Erica herself had shared a verse from Psalm 46, verse 1, just hours before her husband's assassination. God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble. When that same verse was read aloud at the funeral, many felt it was as if a circle had closed, as though God had already prepared them for the storm to come. Music, too, played a powerful role. Hymns filled the hall, sometimes sung by the choir, sometimes softly murmured by the audience. A few attendees quietly sang along, their voices trembling yet full of reverence. The hymns became a universal language, acts of worship for some, gestures of consolation for others. In those melodies, grief and hope coexisted, blending into a collective strength that held the room together. When Erica spoke, she anchored her tribute firmly in her faith. She said the only reason she could stand beside her husband's casket and speak at all was because she believed in God's plan, even in the face of tragedy. Her emphasis was not just for her family, but for the millions watching from afar. It carried the message that loss was not the end, but part of a greater journey rooted in faith. Those who left the funeral carried sorrow with them, but also a sense of being uplifted. They realized Charlie Kirk was remembered not only as a political figure, but as a man who had lived and died with unwavering faith. The presence of prayers, hymns, and especially Erica's vow transformed the ceremony into something both sacred and deeply human. In the end, faith gave the funeral its unique meaning. Not merely a farewell drenched in grief, but a declaration of hope, of continuity, and of a love that transcends even death. Amid the solemn rituals and the presence of national figures, the most heartbreaking image of Charlie Kirk's funeral came from his two young children. They were far too little to grasp the weight of the moment, yet their innocence only magnified the loss, casting a painful silence over the entire hall. Throughout the ceremony, the children remained close to their mother, sometimes carried in her arms, sometimes sitting quietly beside relatives. Their tender faces and bewildered eyes stood in stark contrast to the heavy atmosphere that enveloped the room. Many in attendance could not hold back tears as they watched these innocent children swept into a tragedy far too immense for their young age. In her speech, Erica spoke of her children with a trembling voice. She recalled how she had told their daughter that her father was away on a work trip with Jesus. It was a simple yet heartbreaking explanation, an act of desperate love from a mother trying to shield her child's tender spirit from the brutal truth. That sentence left the room in complete silence, for it captured both her helplessness and her boundless devotion. The children did not cry loudly, nor did they understand that the entire nation was mourning alongside their family. Yet their silence was even more devastating. Each time one of them reached for their mother's hand or leaned against her side, the absence of their father became unbearably clear. For many, this sight was more painful than any eulogy. It reminded everyone that beyond politics and debates, this was the story of a family forever changed. These two children would grow up without their father, carrying a void that nothing could ever replace. The image of their small faces, sitting quietly beside the flag-draped casket, became one of the most wrenching memories of the funeral. It revealed the true cost of violence, not just a life lost, but a stolen childhood, a broken family, and children forced to grow up in absence, a sorrow shared not only by their family, but by an entire nation. When the funeral came to a close, one truth became clear. The solemn speeches and the presence of political figures were not what lingered in the public's memory. Instead, it was the images, captured in moments of grief, that became a collective memory, spreading across America and beyond. In the digital age, where every moment can be recorded and shared instantly, Charlie Kirk's funeral became a vivid example of the power of images over words. The most striking among them was the photograph of Erica Kirk leaning over the open casket, her hand clasping her husband's. Tears streamed down onto his lifeless fingers, her face pressed against the body she could not let go of. That photograph quickly appeared on newspaper front pages, television broadcasts, and within hours, it had been shared millions of times across social media. People did not just see a picture, they felt a story. Love and despair, pain without words, and a loss so profound it gripped the heart of a nation. But it was not only that photograph. Many other images from the funeral also spread widely. The funeral